learned and we've adjusted to is injuries. We had injuries going into the season. So when we went to Iowa, I had 5 defensive linemen, but I ended up pulling one by halftime, so I only had 4 playing. We only had 4 linebackers there. I had 6 offensive linemen. And, for the big guys, you got to be able to have some type of rotation, so that hurt us. That was an excellent football team that we played. They prepared well. They schemed very well. So, not taking anything from them, anything at all away from them. They were just a good football team, and they were ready for us. And not making excuses. It's always harder to play on the road. You got the long road trip, and the bus came in that same day. It was an hour and a half late. You're scrambling, trying to get guys thinking about football. We were on the tracks when the train was coming through that day. So, we just got back to what we do, what we are. We're a balanced football team, and that's how we've been going ever since. We try to stay 50-50 run the pass, which I think that makes it a little bit harder for teams to scheme on us. So that's the biggest thing is we got back to our basics and said, hey, we're a run and passing team, so let's do both. Let's not try to be one or the other. So and we got things settled down on defense and realized, hey, we can go with 4, we can go with 5 defensive linemen. We can get through this, and we did. And the guys, like I said, since the Door County game, they've been playing very physical football, and it's just every week they've just gotten better. So we're on the right track right now, so things are going real good for us.
Yeah, things are definitely going really good. And next week you travel after 3 games in a row at home to go to Chicago to play the Thunder. And looking at the game against the Thunder, I'm obviously haven't had a chance to look at film from their game tonight. But what has to happen for you to continue this winning streak next week on the road?
Well, the one thing with the Thunder is that's a very dangerous football team. We played them in that league championship, and I know you don't compare last year's team to this year's team, but, you still got your core players from that year, from that team last year, and same with us. So I know they're real talented at their skill position, their wide receiver positions. They got a good quarterback. They got a good running game. They play good defensive football. So, we're pretty evenly matched. So, we really got to this week is get the film room, break down what they're doing this year, and, just be absolute students of the game so that we go down there and we're prepared for what they're trying to do to us. So I think it's just going to be game preparation is going to be the key in this game.
Yeah, definitely game preparation. Now, after that, you got 2 in a row on the road, then you play the Hitmen, and then obviously go into the playoffs, and obviously you don't want to look too far ahead. You never do. But just the team as a whole, I know you've been around the Raiders for quite a while as a player and then an assistant coach and now the head coach. Have you been a part of a Raider team that is clicking on all cylinders like this team is right now?
I would have to say yes, I have, because there's been so many great teams, like the 89 championship team that repeated. Those guys were a phenomenal team. I was fortunate enough to play with them at 89 and be part of that championship. One of the best teams I ever played on was the 94 team. That's when we went undefeated. We didn't get invited to a tournament. That team was absolutely, in my opinion, was ridiculous. So there's been a few. I mean, we got a long history of great football teams, and this team is right there with them. They're definitely they're one of the best teams that's been around. It's hard to cross over, different decades and see, well, is this team better than that team? But I can tell you for sure that this team right now is on fire, and they can compete with anybody.
Yeah, definitely they can compete with anybody. And, you're going down the stretch run, 3 regular season games left. You have a to-be-determined date on there. And this would be my final question before I let you go. Okay. What do you feel you need to, as a team, needs to improve on for that stretch run as you make a quest for another national championship?
I think the biggest part of it right now is staying focused. When you have so much success that we've been having here lately, you got to fight that evil of complacency, and where it seems like whatever you do, it works. Well, the reason it works is because you work at it. So we got to stay mentally tough and stay on top of what we're doing and not get complacent. And I think we're going to do very well. So I think that's the key to the rest of the season. And complacency is a hard thing to fight. It really is. Oh.
Yeah, definitely. I can agree with that. I did play high school and a couple years in college. That is definitely a big thing to have to fight. But thank you for calling in. I appreciate your time, and best of luck to you the rest of the way.
All right. Thank you very much.
Yep. Have a good rest of your night.
All right. You too.
Yep.
Bye.
And that was Coach Kennedy, the head coach of the Racine Raiders, talking briefly about the 91-20 victory the Raiders had today. Now we're going to take our last break, and when we come back, going to talk a little bit about the upcoming game next week, and head on out of here and wrap up the show. So thank you for listening. You've been listening to the fifth quarter on your radio friend, AM 1400 WRJN.
What's your routine? Everybody has one.
And welcome back to the fifth quarter here on your radio friend, AM 1400 WRJN. I am your host, Evan Witalison, and thank you for listening to me tonight talk about the Racine Raider victory, the 91-20 win by the Raiders. And before we do wrap up and talk about next week's game, we are going to play you the play that the Raiders broke 90 points on.
4th and 6, Raiders offense stays out there. Elliott and Morris to the right. Baskin and Smith to the left. Triplet to the left of Tilsky. Tilsky in the shotgun. 2:45 left to play here in the game. Tilsky throwing out to his right. Elliott at the 5. Lowers his shoulder. Touchdown, Raiders!
And the Raiders on that broke 91-20. And before we do wrap it up, we do have the voice of the Racine Raiders, Don Wadewitz, on the phone. How you doing tonight, Don? How's your voice doing?
The voice is hanging in there so far. It's been a recovery process since the 4th of July parade. Caught a little bit of a cold and had no voice when I woke up this morning, which is a bit of a concern for a broadcaster.
Yeah, definitely a huge concern. And, if you didn't have a voice, then it probably would have been Gino doing the play-by-play and the color commentary all together. But, a big win by the Raiders, 91-20. We just had Coach Kennedy on the phone talking about the win. But what is your biggest thing you take out of this game, this Raider victory?
The Raiders really they got past that hump, I think, of where these games have been closer, a lot of them, than I think they should have been, and that finally ended here tonight. And you were talking the rivalry aspect, and it's hard to say something is a rivalry when one team has won every game, and pretty much, you look at the 6 games, and every time it's been by an increasing margin. And so, yeah, the teams are from the same town. The players have played against one another in high school and maybe RYS and such. But how much of a rivalry is it really on the field? Between individual guys, there probably is some stuff there. But between the teams, I just don't see it there. And I think even with the turnout tonight, you're starting to see that the fans aren't seeing that it's a rivalry until the Threat can topple the Raiders once.
Yeah, and the Threat obviously have some turmoil going on. You said until they can top the Raiders once. Now, just looking at what they got going on, the new coach and the restructuring, now, do you see the Threat legitimately being a challenge anytime soon with all the restructuring that's been going on?
In semi-pro, from year to year, you just never know. And anything can change. The Raiders are going to go through a big transition next year. A lot of the guys are, talking about retirement. A lot of those quality veterans are talking that they may retire, and what is that going to do to the makeup of the team? Yeah, there's a lot of young guys ready to step up, but you're losing a lot of leadership, and what could that mean for next season, even for the Raiders?
Yeah, definitely, and that's definitely true. If what you're talking about can change year to year for sure. Now, one of the top questions I've been asking listeners, just to kind of mention their, some of their favorite rivalries in sports. Do you have some that can pop off the top of your head?
I think the Marquette-Wisconsin basketball rivalry is a good rivalry. Obviously, I think you're looking at Packers-Bears or Packers-Vikings or Packers-Lions, depending which of those three teams is at the top of their game on any given year or any given stretch. Those are a couple of my local favorites.
Yeah, those are definitely some good ones. And other ones that we've had some callers mention is the Army-Navy one, Ohio State and Michigan. And, I'd mentioned, especially since believe they're playing this weekend, the Red Sox and the Yankees. But, I know you've been battling a cold, so I don't want to have you, talk too much longer. Just want to get your quick thoughts on next week's game going to Chicago to play the Thunder before we let you go.
As I was talking to Gino in the postgame, what can the Raiders take away from this type of victory heading into, it's not even just the Thunder game, it's the game after that, both of them on the road, the Thunder and the Lincoln Way Patriots. And you want to talk about rivalries, and I'd say right now the Raiders' biggest rival in the MSFL is probably the Chicago Thunder. Playing them in the MSFL championship game, they've given the Raiders a couple of good, tough games, and you look back to 92, 93, this is a Thunder team that the Raiders beat 103-0 that is stuck around, and they're one of the top franchises in semi-pro football in the country right now. And it's going to be a good game. It's going to be on the road. The next two are, and this is going to determine the course of the Raiders season over these next 2 weeks.
Yeah, and then the final question, we had a caller ask, and I figured you'd be more of an expert on this than I will, because I'm not going to pretend to be, expert on the, minor league football rules and regulations. But the caller brought up the possibility of the Raiders becoming kind of independent, not being part of the league, because they've pretty much dominated the MSFL since they've joined, and there's really not been much competition. But is that something the Raiders can do, and is it something that could be worth exploring the way they're just dominating everybody?
In the mid-'90s, the Raiders did an independent season, and the thing is that when you win your league, you get a lot of automatic bids into postseason tournaments. And when you go independent, you might not get those automatic bids, and that's something that happened to the Raiders when they did try to go independent. On top of that, you need to be able to find these quality teams to play, and so finances are going to play a big role. And back in the 90s, travel was a little bit cheaper. Now travel is, the way the Raiders do it, and the Raiders do it right, travel is very expensive, especially road trips when you talk about wanting to play teams like St. Paul, the Pioneers, the Des Moines Blaze, those types of quality teams. Those are expensive road trips that the Raiders would have to do, and you're not going to get 12 teams to come into Horlick Field, and fans I don't think would want 12 teams to come into Horlick Field, let's say, in a season. You got to go on the road and kind of prove yourself, too, if you're going to run an independent schedule. So, it's a thoughtful idea, but just I think the logistics of doing something like that would be very, very difficult. And obviously the board of directors, after every season, they look at all of the options available to the Raiders, and they make what is the best decision that they feel for the team at that time. And, yeah, this year, some of the new teams that came in, maybe they're not quite to that level that we were hoping that they would be at, but I've seen a lot of promise in the Sheboygan County Rebels. The Door County Destroyers, the type of organization they're running, just tremendous from top to bottom. Teams like the Chicago Chaos, who aren't an MSFL team, and they didn't do fair well on the July 5th game, but that's a holiday, too. They were missing a couple key guys. Those types of teams are growing, and they're going to become better, and they're going to become better competition for the Raiders. And this is all a cyclical thing, and it'll all come back around where, these teams are going to be good at some point in time, and they're going to provide that competition. And I think really you got to look at the local and the regional is the way to go